Hello, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. And wherever you are in this wide, wonderful, beautiful world that we live in, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. I'm the sales relationship coach. But what does that mean? Everything that we do within sales is building a relationship from the foundations up to actually winning and maintaining that trusted advisor role as engaging with your clients in a good way. So it helps build it for the longevity. That's the way I look at building sales because it's for the long term, not the short term wins. It's for the long term gains. And I have a wonderful guest today, and he's on my left. I always get it left, right. Anyway, Chuckmollor, you are very welcome. He's on the east coast of the US at the moment, and we'll be chatting a little bit more about strategic leadership, and we're obviously going to be talking about sales as well. So you're very welcome, Chuck.
Jason, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today and talking about, sales and leadership, two topics very near and dear to my heart. So thank you for having me.
Looking forward to a little bit of synopsis about you before we deep dive, because everyone wants to know a little bit about you. You're the founder and executive coach and advisor of MCG Partners, an organization specializing in leadership and talent optimization. So I'm looking forward to listening about that, aligning business and people strategy for maximum results. So I'm always into performance. I know it might be a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but it's getting the most out of people, finding other people's success. And I think we spoke about that a little bit. And you've also got a wonderful book, The Rise of the Agile Leader. And uh, I read a lot of books, and I'll try and get that onto my radar as well to have a look into that, because I run global sales leadership programs. So I'm up for your experience as well. So I get knowledge as well. So tell me some touch points to where and how you got into this whole area of the agile leader.
Yeah, sure. So my background is management consulting. So I've spent many years in the consulting space, but maybe not very typical in the sense that I like to experiment in different practices and methodologies. So I started off doing process reengineering for 1 year, which is, great work, but it was just too dry for me. And then I moved into mergers and acquisitions, managing change management, which was very exciting, very interesting.
Mhm.
And then I moved into some strategy work, which I also really enjoyed. And then probably about 20 plus years ago, I moved into the leadership development, talent management space. And in consulting, like in a lot of businesses, or across consulting professional services, the
Mhm.
path is pretty consistent. You go from being a consultant to managing projects and teams to managing a practice, which also involves very heavy business development and origination. And then either you stop there or you go on to become a head of sales or a COO and then a CEO. So I did all those things. And I ran a global consulting firm for about 5 years, and we got acquired twice in 1 year. And then I decided to start my own firm 15 years ago. And so I have a unique role where I manage a company, a business. We've got over 40 people. And I also advise and coach executives myself. And therefore, as you mentioned, I wrote a book, a leadership book as well. So that's my background.
Wow, that's quite an eclectic background. So, what was the eureka moment when, well, I can really enable other people to find their success in whatever level of business it might be? What sort of inspired you to do that?
I think some of it comes down to your own experiences, but I think the reason I got into consulting, I've always been interested in not only solving problems, but making a difference, making an impact, right? Maybe initially it was helping organizations be successful, helping those executive teams. But I think as I've advanced in my career and gotten later in my career, it really is about helping these individuals, these teams, these organizations, these cultures have the right kind of environment, the right healthy relationships, interactions, and really help them with, if you're helping them individually and collectively, you're helping the business, you're helping performance. So I think as I've matured in my career, It's really about, making an impact. And there's some idealistic aspects to that, but I'm okay with that. Yeah, I think that's always been something I've been very, very motivated by. In my own experiences, my own trials and tribulations as a leader, and things that I wish I had gotten in my career, I didn't have in my career, but things that really helped me understand myself better, and frankly, helped me become not only better in sales, but actually help me be more effective as a leader. So I want to be able to, in a ways, give back, to the world in that sense, in terms of the role that I have in my. So I've been very fortunate. I'm very passionate with the people that work for us, and my team are very passionate about making a difference. And that's one of our motivators. My team's
Mhm.
always excited to get out there every day and talk to clients and manage our clients, and try to make a difference in all the services we provide.
So when you engage with clients, because you're obviously in a sales organization, because I think most people are, and you're
Right.
helping others getting better at what they need. So what are the challenges that you're seeing in leadership right now?
Yeah. So there's lots of challenges. One, and let's talk about leadership and let's say business development or
Yeah.
sales, because one, we're in a remote hybrid environment for the most part across the world, depending on what country you're in and what's going on in your country and the philosophy or even your company for that matter. We're kind of, there's some people in office, obviously, but the majority of employees are still either hybrid or virtual.
Yeah.
And in that case, you think about, as a leader, how do I create and maintain culture? How would I make sure that people feel connected to our environment, our philosophy, and how we value and treat people, and they understand that, and how that connects to our external brand, and how our internal brand is not only aligned with that but reflects that. So that's one of the biggest challenges leaders have today, and keeping people engaged and feeling appreciated and valued, and feeling they're part of a team and part of an organization. That's the biggest challenge. From a business development standpoint, Jason, as you already know, it's hard when you're not having a chance to do a lot of stuff in person, right? Yes, conferences have been coming back this past year, but a lot of what I would call the more traditional business development relationship management opportunity, like conferences, like in-person events, they're coming back, but they're still not necessarily widespread. So I think as a business development professional in sales, there's been much greater challenge of how do I go out there and generate new business and generate new relationships, recognizing a lot of my traditional, strategies are not necessarily fully in place yet.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that, and due to the big recession that is looming or whatever, a lot of companies are cutting costs on energy, flights, and all of that.
Mhm.
And I think COVID had a little bit to do with that as well, due to people going, well, you don't necessarily need to go out and jump on a plane and do this, that, and the other anymore. Where you still can have that conversation online and use a little bit of technology around that, whether you're using social engagements or whatever to build in that pipeline. But I'm curious. I think you do need a little bit of hybrid approach. It is good to see people, however you network, but there are ways and means to do that. So how would you go out there and advise your clients to maybe either have that hybrid model, or even to cut costs or whatever? What are the strategies that you go out to?
When it comes to managing a hybrid workforce,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of, it's interesting because as you've probably been reading, and again, I'm sure this is the case in most countries because we do a lot of international work, and
Mhm.
we are a global firm, even though we're headquartered here in the US. So we do a lot of work in Asia and Europe and South America and across the world. And what you're seeing is a lot of CEOs are pushing to have employees back in the office.
Yeah.
But the reality is that employees are resisting that. They
Yes.
like the quality of life. They like, not being able to get into a train or their car or whatever their transportation is, not have an hour and a half, or even 2 hour commute each way. So they like that flexibility. They like that kind of lifestyle. Now, again, as we already know, there's a lot of downsides to that, right? Because how do you build a team? How do you onboard and get people feel connected, especially when managers and all employees are running from one virtual video meeting to another? So, how do you create time for connection, for building teams, or having what I call ad hoc conversations?
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of work, Jason, over the last 2 years in training managers how to manage a virtual and a hybrid workforce more effectively. And
Mhm.
that includes managing change, because this is a different type of change. This is not traditional change. And not only that, the level of change, not just because of hybrid and virtual workforce, but because of the intensity of consumers and lifelines to products and services.
Yeah.
The cycles are getting shorter and shorter. Consumers are demanding something new and fresh and different sooner than ever.
Yeah.
So the pressure to be innovative, the pressure, and the intensity of change in terms of your business strategy and the direction you're going in as a business, that's getting shorter and more intense. So there's just a lot of pressure out there, in a global workforce to have the right talent, to make sure that not only do you have the right expertise, but they kind of fit your organization, your culture. And I think a lot of companies really have to take a step back and think about what they mean by culture, because not necessarily everyone has the same definition. And a
Yeah.
culture for me essentially is, how do you value people, and what's your decisions in terms of how you recognize, how you reward, how you develop, and how you hold people accountable. So your interactions, your decisions with people essentially is a reflection of your culture. And if you really want to get more specific, culture essentially is a reflection of your values, and what you stand for. And that should be a reflection of your mission or your purpose as a business, as an organization,
Mm.
philosophically. And again, that should be connected to your external brand in terms of why do people want to buy your products or your services, why they want to be associated with you as an organization. And then that needs to be reflective and aligned with, why do you want to work here? Why
Yeah.
do you want to stay here? Why do you want to have a career here? So I think a lot of organizations, and we're seeing a lot more work in that space, Jason. A lot more companies are starting to realize that, well, we need to spend some more time here. So that way, as we know about the great resignation, all this turnover happening around the world, it's not just because people can make more money, it's because people literally are not satisfied with their employer. And there's a lot of reasons, but a lot of it comes ultimately down to the effectiveness of management, and necessarily, are you really focusing on your culture or not?
Yeah, there's a lot of different facets around the culture of the organization. And it is, I think, leaders to really understand people and understand what motivates them, their intrinsic or their extrinsic motivations, because we're all
Yes.
different. But we all have to get that buy-in and that value, that same value that we all believe in the path. But I think there's got to be a lot of understanding of your team so they can sort of bring into the leadership's like vision and go, I like that, I love that. But they've also got to add into that vision, leading from the back and getting other people to come up with ideas. I know the C-suite come up with the wonderful ideas, and great, that's incredible. But what about everyone else? Even people, the customer service, the salespeople, they
Yeah.
all speak and connect with their clients, but they all can add value to the organization with what they know, and that's probably where Agile comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, agile means a lot of things. When the book, the rise of the agile leader, can you make the shift? The title, it's not necessarily about agile, the methodology in terms of Scrum methodology, which came
Mm,
out of software development, 20 plus years ago.
yeah.
I'm really referring to agile, the verb, and a lot of it, as we know, when we talk about agile, it's about being able to shift. It's about being able to pivot quickly. It's about being flexible. It's about being receptive and open to new and different. And one of the elements that you just highlighted is really critical. Are you creating an environment, a work environment where people feel comfortable to challenge the status quo, to generate ideas, to say, why are we doing this? What about doing that? And if you don't encourage or create an environment where people feel safe or feel comfortable to do those things, not only you're not going to create an environment that's vibrant enough for people to feel valued, appreciated, and wow, this is an organization that values me, my ideas.
Mm,
But also, you're not going to get not only the optimal performance out of them, but you're potentially cutting them off in terms of whether they want to be with you long term or not. So there's so many factors that go into creating the right work environment for your people that encourages them. And that includes, by the way, Jason, accepting failure and
yeah.
accepting mistakes. We and I talk about this a lot, but we sometimes forget about the relationship between failure and innovation.
Yeah.
There is no innovation without failure. You know, if you don't experiment, if you don't try, you don't fall down and make a mistake and fail, you're not going to learn how to innovate. You're not going to come up with those new ideas. I don't care what department, what function, you know, products or services or internal processes. It could be any part of your organization that can be innovative, but you've got to create the right environment to be able to have that.
I think it's failing forward, isn't it? Giving people
Yeah,
the options to fail. Because in set, like we've all failed. Let's be honest with you, every single person has failed. I think sometimes that little ego in there says, oh no, I want success, I want success. But let's have a look at where we have failed along the line. Like I've been in sales for many years, and I've failed loads of times. I come back and go, well, maybe I didn't approach the customer in the right way. Maybe I didn't do this, or maybe I didn't do. But it's giving you feedback and resources to go, well, let's have a look at what I've just done and let's see how I can improve on that process so I can engage better next time. I'm really understanding myself so I can actually engage with other people. And we talk about that within the culture and the organization. When you get people to buy in, everyone believes it, and then they go out and sell more, and then there's more revenue for the clients and the revenue for you in the business. So it's a two-way thing, really. If we're happy as a workforce, as a sales force, we're going to actually go out and do more for our clients, and we're going to actually sell and
absolutely.
advise them in a better way. So that's the way I look at things.
Well, I agree with you, and you know this. I'm preaching to the choir with this comment, but if the passion and the belief, not only in yourself, but in what you represent in the marketplace, if it's not there, how are you going to convince a potential client why they should work with you or buy your products and services if the belief and the passion is not there? So yes, creating the right work environment is so critical, and where people feel supported and they feel, look, you know, I'm not going to always be successful. And so, yes, there's so many elements to that. I also believe in the element of, you know, sort of you know, the, you know, almost like the opposite mindset of sales. You know, I'll be curious of your reaction to this, but I tell my people all the time, we don't sell. And they look at me like I'm
Absolutely agree.
sometimes a little crazy. And I say, no, I've never sold in my life. I said, I don't try to convince someone. And again, I'm being a little devil's advocate in this comment. I'm
I
being a
don't
little
think you
disruptive.
are actually.
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely bang on. Like
right.
people that sell, there's a barrier, but if you give a value to someone, it's slightly different. It's a different shift. If you're actually going out to sell, you've got that sales hat on, but you're not. What you want to do is help and advise, and maybe educate or give value to your client,
Yeah,
people that you speak to. So I totally concur with you there. I've got that yes head on me there. So
yeah, yeah.
I'm
I
buying
agree.
into it.
Yeah, I just think it's a mindset. I think when you're in sales, whether you're selling services or products, you know, yes, I understand the importance of quotas and the importance of activity. Those
Yeah.
are all critical in terms of the processes we have in sales and business development. But if you approach, to your point, the customer, the prospect about how can I understand you better? How do I really assess the root cause of your challenges, your issues, and whether I have the right solutions to help address your needs? And if you take that to your earlier comment in the beginning of your show here, the longer term interest of I'm here to really create a healthy partnership where I'm here to add value. I'm not here to necessarily promote or push a product or services. And your ability to ask the right questions demonstrates your expertise. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it goes into that category. Don't declare, you know, demonstrate, don't declare. You demonstrate by asking the good questions, the right questions to truly understand them and understand their business, understand what they're trying to do. That puts you in a position to have the right conversations where you can actually address whether they have the right need for your products or services. So that's what I mean when I talk about, you know, don't sell, because it's not about selling. It's really about understanding and creating, you know, partnership and relationships, as you mentioned earlier in your show.
And that's where we link in now to emotional intelligence, because that plays, oh, that was slick. But that plays a massive factor, because once we understand ourselves, once we understand our listening skills, once we understand how we know ourselves and make ourselves more accountable for our own actions and learn more. But it also is being having that curious mind. And I think emotional intelligence I think there's a lots of different areas around that, and there's probably another discussion. But again, we all need that as leaders and leadership as sales professionals. And I think whatever industry that you're in, I think there's lots of different touch points around that.
No, I agree. And to me, at least when it comes to what we're talking about, the big thing for emotional intelligence, including being more self-aware and understanding the impact you have on others and what your approach is, but it's really about understanding the person that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
By the way, you may have had a scheduled meeting, but maybe something's going on. They're just not there. They're not present. Reschedule.
Yeah.
That's part of emotional intelligence. Read your audience, understand what's going on in the world, ask them if everything's okay, if this is still a good time. So reading your audience, paying attention to cues is so important. The other element is really understanding, the styles and motivations and the behaviors of your clients or your prospects. Everyone's got a different personality. Everyone's got a little different approach, and understanding how to adapt your style to your audience is another really important part of emotional intelligence, whether it's in leadership or in business development.
Yeah.
So for example, if someone's highly authoritative and highly need to be in control and charge, well, relinquish that.
Yeah.
Let them drive the conversation. That's perfectly fine. Some people are very relationship oriented, very outgoing. Some people are more reserved, more analytical. They want to just kind of cut to the chase and get down to business. So, some people are highly skeptical. Some people are highly trusting. I mean, over time, we kind of understand these characteristics that come out very quickly as you're trying to build a relationship. Because ultimately, by doing this effectively, Jason, it's all about establishing trust. When
Yeah.
you think about the clients that you work with, the clients that come work with you and purchase your products or services, not only have you been able to establish credibility, which is obviously very important, but you've been able to establish trust. And that to me, again, is a really big part of emotional intelligence as well.
It's trust, connection, because people buy people and brands they like and trust, but they also buy them because they can connect with them on whatever sort of levels that you've actually just suggested. And it is trust, and it's also your credibility. Obviously, that builds in a lot of how people perceive you, especially in the marketplace, who maybe you've helped, other similar verticals, lots of different areas around trust, but it is that human connection one-on-one. And it is lovely to speak to people in the real world, but I think we get so used to it now with all of these digital environments. But I think that still plays with a lot of our emotional intelligence and our emotional well-being as well. So how we can bring on our personality within this square box and whatever else that we're doing, and understanding other people's tone, tonality, and body language around that. Question I'm going to ask you, Chuck, is
Sure.
if you were interviewing you holistically, what sort of questions would you ask yourself?
What's the context of the interview? What kind of interview?
An interview with you speaking to yourself on leadership. As
Okay. Boy, that's a good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question, Jason. I think there's a lot of questions potentially I would ask myself. I would ask myself sort of what I think is the future of leadership. I think what are the key things that leaders today need to be focusing on. I probably would ask more about my own leadership experiences, but there's a bunch of great questions I think that can be asked. You've already asked a number of them.
so, on the first question that you would ask yourself, could you elaborate a little bit further, like the future of leadership?
Yeah, so actually the premise of my book was the question, what is the future of leadership? Because most leadership models hadn't changed very dramatically over the last 10 plus years. And yet the world has been changing. This is before COVID, right? So COVID just, if anything, accelerated that.
You did.
And so for me is, what do leaders really need to do to make sure they're going to be effective? And so we went out and we interviewed CEOs, we interviewed leadership teams and organizations or clients. We looked at some research, and then we came up with this leadership model that we call the Agile leader, which I highlight in the book. In addition to that, we wanted to provide a roadmap to really help leaders get to the next level,
Yeah.
right? Because we're inclusive of no matter what your background is, what level you're at. We're all trying to figure out, how do I get to the next level of effectiveness? And that could also include career advancement, but it's also about, how do I get more effective? And
Yep.
when you think about all the challenges, we only highlighted one of them. One of them is, of course, hybrid and virtual workforce challenges. There's so many other, and some of it depends on, frankly, what country you live in as well. In the U.S., You know, the last couple of years, we have a lot of social injustice type of issues around race and inclusion.
That's right.
So that's become really, really big importance in corporations that have offices or headquartered in the U.S. of how to be more diverse and inclusive. You know, so the multiple generations in the workforce now across the globe is a great challenge. The speed of change, the complexity of now global workforce, and again, do you understand the country cultures? And again, that's necessarily new, but when
Yeah.
you add them all together all at once, like we are today, the cycles of innovation getting shorter and shorter, competition getting more fierce, the move toward digitalization, as you just highlighted a second ago. I mean, it's just much more complex to be a leader today, more than ever.
Yeah.
So, are you truly motivated, and do you really enjoy not only the management part of your job, but also the leadership part of your job? The management's the day-to-day stuff. The leadership is the inspiration, the motivation, the vision, the communication, and frankly, spending time developing and coaching your people. Too many managers today, Jason, are not spending enough time managing. You know,
Yeah.
they're either putting out fires, they're involved maybe
Getting
operationally,
involved in
they're
other
involved
stuff.
day to
Yeah.
day. Yes, they're managing meetings, but they're not necessarily spending enough time connecting and developing their people and their teams. So there's a lot of challenges out there. So that's some of the things I'd be getting into.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail right on the head with everything you've said there. And I think coaching and developing others is so essential, especially when people are not performing the way they should do. They need help, but the only way to help them is by coaching them, not by putting your arm around them and mentoring them, but really asking them lots of good questions. Like if we're in sales, you ask your clients really good questions. You open it up a little bit as you unpeel the onion until you find the core of the issue, the challenge. But when you coach someone, as you know, because I'm a coach as well, it's asking some really good questions and helping them open up and make them think of the idea, not you giving them the idea, because how people are going to learn? They don't. So it's all of that, and getting other people to run the meetings rather than you run the meeting.
Right.
You don't necessarily need to run a meeting if you're a senior leader. Get someone else to do it. Lots of
Right.
other things. So yeah, I think this conversation, we can go on for another hour, but Chuck, I really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you so much. Could you give us some points of where people can find out more about you, Chuck?
Sure. They can find me. I've got two websites. One's my company website. It's mcgpartners.com. I also my own website, really because of the book, and that's my name. It's Chuckmollor, MOLLOR.com. And you can access me directly either one of those two websites.
That's
I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn profile. Message me there as well.
LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. We all use it. It's incredible to connect with a global audience. So thank you. You've been listening to the Global Sales Leader Podcast. I am your host, Jason Cooper. Every week I speak to phenomenal leaders in and around the area of sales, sales leadership, psychology, lots of different areas around, because what I want to do is help people learn and help people grow. And it's all about that. And I'm sure from today's podcast, you would have got some wonderful golden nuggets and some wonderful tips, and everything will be in the show notes at the end of this. Take care. Thank you.